Hey, it's Andrew Brown from Exam Pro, and we are looking at Amazon RDS. And so we are going to create our own RDS database, as well as an Aurora database, as well as looking how to migrate from RDS to Aurora. And also maybe we'll look at some backup solutions there and some of the other superfluous features that RDS supplies us. If you're wondering, how do you get to the console here? You go to the top here, type RDS, and click that, and you will end up in the same place as I am. So let's get to it and create our first database, okay? And we're gonna do that by going on the left-hand side here to databases and clicking create database. So here we are in the RDS creation interface, and the first thing we're presented with is with create standard create and easy create. I assume that this would eliminate some options for us. We're going to stick with standard because we want to have full control over what we're doing here. The next thing is to choose your engine, and so we're going to do Aurora later, and we're going to spin up a Postgres database, which is very popular amongst Ruby on Rails developers, which is my primary web framework that I like to use. Then under templates, this is more configuration for you that allows you to get started very easily. So if you leave this to production here, I want to show you the cost because it's laughably really inexpensive. It's $632 because it's doing a bunch of stuff here. It's running more than one AZ. It's using a very large EC2 instance, and it has provisioned IOPS, okay? And so for our use case, I don't think we want to spend $632, but if you were like an enterprise, it makes sense why they would do that, but if you aren't paying attention, that's very expensive. And there's obviously the free tier, which is what we will want to use here, but we will configure this so that it will end up as free tier here, and we will learn the options as we go through it. So the first thing is we're going to have a database, so we'll just keep our database name as database1. Then we need to set a master password, so we will set it as Postgres, and we'll see if we can get away with that. Obviously, when you make your real password, you'd use a password generator or let it auto-generate one so it's very long in length. But I just want to be able to work with this database very easily for the purpose of this follow along, okay? Then we have our DB instance size. So for the DB instance size, you can see it's set to standard classes M. I would say the standard class is more like burstable, which are T2s. And so this is what we're used to when we're saving money. So we have the T2 micro. If you are a very small startup, you would probably be starting on T2 micro and do totally fine for you. So we're going to change it to T2 micro, okay? And the next thing is storage class. So here we can choose provision IOPS. And so we have faster IOPS, right? But we're going to go with general here because we don't need that crazy amount of IOPS there, and that's going to reduce storage. There is this ability to do storage auto scaling. So this is kind of nice where it dynamically will scale your database to your needs. I think I will just leave that on. I don't see why we wouldn't want to keep that on unless there's additional cost, which I don't believe there is. Then there's multi-AZ, and so that would set up another database for us in another availability zone at a standby. I don't think we need that, so we're going to turn that off. But just to show you how easy it is to turn that on. Then we're going to need to choose our VPC. It's very important, whatever web application you are deploying, that your RDS database is in the same VPC, or it's going to be a bit of trouble trying to connect to it. So we'll just leave that in the default there. There's some additional connectivity options here. And so it has a subnet group, so we're going to have it to default. We're going to ask whether we want this to be publicly accessible. Generally, you're not going to want a public IP address, but if we want to interact with this database very easily, I'm going to set it to yes for the sake of this follow along, because it would be nice to put some data into this database, interact with it with Table Plus, and then we'll go ahead and delete it. Okay. Then down below we have a VPC security group. I'm thinking that it will probably create one for us by default, so we'll leave it with the default one, which is totally fine. We can choose our preference for AZ. I don't care, we'll leave it by default. And then we have the port number 5432, which is the standard port number there. You might want to change it just for the sake of security reasons, because if you change the port number, then people have to guess what it is. And there's some additional configurations here. So what we have is the initial database name. If you're not specified when RDS does not create a database. Okay, so we probably want to name our database here. So I'm just going to name it database1 here. You can also authenticate using IMDb authentication. So if that is one way you want to authenticate to your database, that is definitely a really nice way of doing that. So you might want to have that checkboxed on. Then you have backups, okay? And so backups are enabled automatically and they're set for 7 days. If you want to turn backups, which I definitely do, I'm going to set it to 0 days. If we had left that on and created our RDS instance, it would take forever to create because immediately after it starts up, it's going to then create a backup, and that just takes a long time. You can set the backup window here and select when you want to have it run. There is the chance of interruptions during a backup window, so you definitely want to pick this when it's not the most important usage by your users. We can enable performance insights. I'm pretty sure, I thought that was only accessible for certain classes of database. Advanced Database Performance Monitoring. It offers free tier for 7 days of rolling. Okay, sure, we'll turn it on. But at one point, you had to have a higher tier to be able to use this. Then we have the retention period here for performance insights. I guess it's 7 days. We'll leave that there. Appears to be encrypted by default. That seems like a good thing there. There's an account ID. Kindly ignore my account ID for this account, but this is a burner account, so it's not like you're going to be able to do anything with that ID. We have enhanced monitoring. I don't need that, so I'm going to turn that off. That seems kind of expensive. We can export our logs. That is a good thing to have. We can have it so it automatically upgrades minor versions. That is a very good thing to set. You can also set the window for that. We can turn on deletion protection. I'm not going to have that on because I'm going to want to delete this lickety split. And so there we go. And so it says 1544, but I know that this is free tier because it's using the T2 micro. And so we get things. So even though it doesn't say it's free, I definitely know it's free, but this gives you the true cost. So after your free tier would run out, this is what it would cost, about you $15 per month at the lowest tier, the lowest thing you can get on AWS for your RDS instance. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that database. So I failed creating my database because it turns out database is a reserved word for this engine, and that's totally fine. So we're gonna have to scroll up here and change the database name. And so I'm just gonna change it to Babylon 5, and we're gonna go ahead and create that, and this time we're gonna get our database. And so now we're just waiting for our database to be created here. And so we just saw the region AZ pop into existence here, and it is currently being created. You might have to hit refresh here a few times. So we'll just wait a little bit here until this status has changed. So our database is available, and now we can actually try to make a connection to it and maybe put in some SQL and run a query. And so before we can try to even make a connection, we need to edit our security group, okay? Because we are going to need access via port 5432 to connect to that instance there. So we'll just edit our inbound rules, and we're going to drop down and look for Postgres in here. So there's 5432, and we're going to set it to only our IP because we don't want to make this publicly accessible. And we will hit save, okay? And so now if we want to make a connection, we should have no trouble here. I'm just going to close that tab, and we're going to have to collect some information. You're going to need to use a tool such as Table Plus. If you are on Mac or Windows, it's free to download and install. If you are on Linux, you could use I think it's called dbeaver. Okay, so that's an open source SQL tool here. And so I'm going to just make a new connection here, and we're just going to choose Postgres. We're going to fill in some information. So I called this Babylon 5. Okay, and that was the name of the database as well, Babylon 5. All right, and the username was Postgres, and the very not secure password is Postgres as well. Again, if you are doing this for production or any case, you should really generate out a very long password there. And then we need the host. So the host is going to be this endpoint here, okay? And the port is 5432 by default, so I don't have to do anything special here. And I'm just going to hit test and see if we connect, okay? And so it went green, so that is great. I'm going to hit save, so I can save myself some trouble here. And I will just double click and make a connection. There's a bit of latency here when you are connecting to RDS and just running things. So if you don't see things immediately, just give it a little bit of time or hit the refresh here. But I already have a SQL script prepared here. I'm just going to show it to you. So this is a script, and what it does, actually it shouldn't have been called the Babylon 5 database because I'm mixing Star Trek with Babylon 5. Ridiculous, right? But this is a bunch of starship ship classes from Star Trek and a bunch of starships from Star Trek here, and I'm going to run the script to get us some data here. Okay, and so if we do it for Table Plus, we're going to go import from SQL dump, And I have it on my desktop here called Starfleet Ship Registry. I'm going to hit open. Okay, I'm going to hit import. It's going to run that script and import us our data here into Postgres. Now, if you're using a different database type as MySQL or Oracle, I can't guarantee that this will work, but it will definitely work for Postgres because SQL does vary based on engines, okay? And so it says it's successfully done. It even tells us to do a refresh here. There is a nice refresh button up there that you can click, and we're going to wait for our tables to appear. So there we are. We have our ship classes, and we also have our starships, okay? And I just want to run one query here to make sure queries are working. I'm sure it's going to work. And we're going to go over here and we're just going to get out. We're going to want to pull all the starships that are of ship class defiant. Okay, and we'll just make a new query here and run we'll just say run all, okay? And so there you go. So we're getting data. So that's how you can connect to your RDS database. You just have to open up that port number there. If you were to connect this to your web application, what you'd probably want to do for your security group is to just allow 5432 to the security group of the web application, okay? So here I gave my access to my IP, right? But, you know, you just have whatever your security group is, you know, here. So if you had one for your EC2 instances, your auto-scaling group that holds your EC2 instances, you just put that in there.